The door was cracked open just enough. Kim Dokja stopped mid-stride when he heard the doctor say his full name inside a recovery room he'd never been in. The child speaking to the physician wasn't someone he knew. He didn't have children. He didn't have family, not anymore. But somehow his name was on her lips like a secret she shouldn't possess. Before we dive deeper, beautiful souls, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, because what happens next will shatter everything this iron-blooded CEO thought he knew about his past. Now, let's keep going. Dokja's hand froze on his phone. He'd come to this private surgical wing of Samsung Medical Center for his annual executive health screening, the kind where they charged more for discretion than diagnosis. The hallway was empty, sterile white, smelling of expensive antiseptic. He should have kept walking to his own appointment, but that name. His name. He moved closer to the door, his custom Italian Oxford silent against polished marble floors. So the emergency contact you provided is Kim Dokja? The doctor's voice was professional, cautious. Yes. The girl's voice was small but steady, with that particular clarity that comes from children forced to grow up too fast. My mother said he's my only living relative. She made me memorize his name before she died. Dokja's jaw tightened. Impossible. He was meticulous about distance, about control, about never leaving loose ends that could threaten what he'd built. Kim Holdings wasn't constructed on carelessness or sentiment. His brother had been dead for 8 years. There were no children. No heirs except himself. Mississippi Park, you've just come through major surgery, the doctor continued. We need to verify this information before we can discharge you to anyone's care. I know you don't believe me. Her voice cracked slightly. I just need someone to tell him I'm here. He'll understand when he sees what my mother gave me. Something about her tone, resignation mixed with desperate hope, made Dokja's chest constrict in a way he hadn't felt since the night they told him his brother's car went off Bampo Bridge. He pushed the door open. The doctor looked up startled, but the girl, Park Sooyoung according to the chart at the foot of her bed, turned slowly. And Dokja felt the world tilt. She had his brother's eyes. Not similar. Identical. That particular shape, that shade of brown that looked black in certain light. Her face was gone from recent illness, but the bone structure, the way she held her chin up despite obvious fear, it was like staring at a ghost he'd spent 8 years trying to forget. She was 11 years old, wearing a hospital gown several sizes too large, her dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail. And 4-line fed into her thin arm. But what made Dokja's blood run cold was what she held clutched in her small hand. A gold signet ring embossed with a Kim family crest. The ring he'd personally placed on his brother's finger before they closed the casket. The ring that should have been 6 feet underground in Yanguijin Cemetery. Mr. Kim. Sooyoung's voice was barely a whisper. She didn't stand, too weak from surgery, but she straightened her spine with visible effort. My mother said you would come. She said the dragon always protects his own. The dragon. No one had called him that in 15 years. Not since the streets of Itaewon, before the suits and boardrooms, when that black ink on his neck meant survival instead of scandal carefully hidden beneath tailored collars. Out. Dokja's voice was ice as he addressed the doctor without breaking eye contact with the girl. Now. The doctor scrambled out, pulling the nurse with him, clipboard clattering against the doorframe. Silence filled the space like floodwater. Sooyoung's grip tightened on the ring, her knuckles white, but she didn't look away. This child, this impossible ghost-eyed child, stared at him with a kind of desperate courage that only comes from having absolutely nothing left to lose. Dokja moved further into the room, each step measured, controlled. His mind was already racing through possibilities, threats, angles. This could be an elaborate con. Industrial espionage. A competitor trying to destabilize him before the quarterly earnings report. Kim Holdings had enemies who would love nothing more than to see him distracted, vulnerable, caught off guard by a child with a stolen family heirloom and a well-rehearsed story. But those eyes. And that ring. Where did you get that? His voice was low, dangerous. My mother. Sooyoung's hand trembled, but she held the ring out slightly, not offering it but showing it. Park Mina. She said your brother gave it to her the night before he died. She said he told her if anything ever happened, this would prove I was his. The name hit him like a physical blow. Park Mina. His brother's girlfriend. The art student from Hongdae whom Dokja had met exactly twice. Once at a family dinner where his grandmother had barely concealed her disapproval of the match, and once at the funeral where the young woman had stood in the back, crying silently, before disappearing from Seoul entirely. His grandmother had called her a gold digger. His legal team had found no claim to the estate, no pregnancy, no complications. She'd simply vanished, and Dokja, drowning in his own grief and the sudden weight of an empire he'd never wanted, had let her go. Your mother left Korea 8 years ago. Dokja kept his voice neutral, but his mind was cataloging every detail. The girl's age, roughly 11. The timeline matched. The physical resemblance was undeniable. But resemblance wasn't proof. Why are you here now? Why not contact me years ago? She was scared. Sooyoung's voice gained strength, as if telling her mother's story gave her courage. She said your family would never accept me. That they'd call her a liar or worse. She moved to Busan, changed her name, worked 3 jobs to keep us hidden. She wanted to protect me from all of this. Her gesture encompassed the hospital, the wealth it represented, the world of Kim Holdings that existed beyond these walls. But then she got sick. Cancer. And before she died 3 months ago, she made me promise to find you. She said you were the only one who would understand. The only one who loved your brother the way she did. Dokja studied her. Really studied her. Beyond the resemblance, beyond the ring, beyond the story that was either heartbreakingly true or devastatingly calculated. He looked for tells, for the micro-expressions that would reveal deception. He built an empire on reading people, on knowing when someone was lying, when they were hiding something, when they wanted something from him. All he saw was exhaustion, grief, and a bone-deep loneliness that mirrored something he recognized in himself. "The ring," he said quietly. "Let me see it." Sooyoung hesitated, then slowly extended her hand. Dokja took the ring carefully, and the moment the cool metal touched his palm, he knew. He knew because his brother had worn this ring every single day since their father gave it to him on his 18th birthday. He knew because there was a tiny scratch on the inner band from the time they'd fought off 3 gang members in an alley, and his brother's ring had caught on a knife blade. He knew because he'd held this exact ring in his hand as he said goodbye to the only person who'd ever truly known him. This wasn't a replica. This was real. "How did your mother keep this hidden?" Dokja's voice was rougher now, the ice cracking slightly. "My grandmother had investigators searching for anything he might have left behind. Bank accounts, property, personal effects. Everything was accounted for. Mom said he gave it to her that last night. Told her to keep it safe. That if he didn't come back, she should use it to protect their child." Sooyoung's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She never did. She was too afraid. But she kept it for me. Kept all his letters too. And photos. And a voice recording he made for me before I was born, in case something happened to him. Dokja's world narrowed to this moment. This impossible, terrifying moment where everything he thought he knew about his brother's death, about the past 8 years, about the careful isolation he'd built around himself, was crumbling. "Did your mother ever tell you how he died?" Dokja asked, and he hated how his voice betrayed him with that question, hated the way this child's answer suddenly mattered more than any board meeting or corporate merger. "She said it wasn't an accident." Sooyoung's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "She said someone in your family wanted him gone. And that's why she ran. That's why she hid me. Because she was afraid I'd be next." The words hung in the air like a grenade with a pin pulled. Dokja had suspected. Of course he'd suspected. His brother's car going off Banpo Bridge on a clear night, no alcohol in his system, no apparent reason. But the police had closed the case. Accidental death. And Dokja, 23 years old and suddenly responsible for an entire conglomerate, had been too overwhelmed to push back, to demand answers, to fight the family members who seemed almost relieved by the tragedy. He looked at this girl, this living breathing reminder of everything he'd lost and everything he'd failed to protect. His brother's daughter. His niece. The only family he had left that wasn't poisoned by greed and corporate politics. "What's your full name?" he asked. "Park Sooyoung. I'm 11 years and 7 months old. My birthday is March 15th. My mother's full name was Park Mina, born June 3rd. She died September 9th of this year from pancreatic cancer." The girl recited the facts like she'd practiced them, like she knew she'd need to prove herself. "I don't want anything from you, Mr. Kim. I just need somewhere to go. The hospital called Child Services. They're coming tomorrow to place me in a group home. But my mother said if I could just reach you, if I could just show you the ring, you'd know I was telling the truth." Dokja closed his fist around the ring. Every instinct screamed at him to walk away. To let Child Services handle this. To protect his empire, his carefully constructed life, from this complication that could destroy everything. One DNA test could confirm or deny her story. One phone call to his lawyers could make this disappear. But he looked at those eyes, his brother's eyes, and he remembered a promise made 15 years ago in a cramped apartment in Itaewon. His brother, 17 to Dokja's 12, holding him after their father's arrest. "We're dragons, little brother. We protect our own. Always. No matter what it costs." "Get dressed," Dokja said, his voice returning to that CEO crispness that made board members nervous. "You're coming with me." "What?" Sooyoung's eyes widened. "I'm discharging you from this hospital. My personal physician will handle your follow-up care. You'll stay in my penthouse until we sort this out properly." He was already pulling out his phone, texting his head of security. "I'll have DNA tests run. Background checks on your mother's life. Every detail verified. But until then, Park Sooyoung, you're under my protection." "Why?" The word was barely a breath. "You don't even know if I'm telling the truth." Dokja looked at her, really looked at her, and allowed himself one moment of honesty. "Because if you are my brother's daughter, then I've already failed you for 11 years. I won't fail you for one more day." He paused, his jaw tightening. "And if you're not, if this is some elaborate scheme, then whoever put you up to this will learn very quickly why they call me the Iron Dragon of Kim Holdings." Sooyoung nodded slowly, clutching the hospital blanket. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. Dokja was already moving toward the door. My family is going to make your life hell when they find out about you. The board will see you as a threat. And if your mother was right about my brother's death, then someone very powerful has been hiding a murder for 8 years. He looked back at her, and for just a moment, the ice in his expression melted into something that might have been grief. Welcome to the Kim family, Park Sooyoung. Try not to die before we figure out who you really are. Outside in the hallway, Dokja's phone was already buzzing with incoming messages. His security chief confirming arrival in 10 minutes. His assistant asking about his missed appointment. His grandmother's secretary requesting an urgent meeting about quarterly reports. But for the first time in 8 years, Kim Dokja ignored all of it. Because inside that hospital room was a little girl with his brother's eyes and his brother's ring and possibly his brother's truth. And dragons, as his brother once said, always protect their own. No matter what it costs. The black Mercedes pulled into the underground garage of Dokja's Gangnam penthouse at exactly 9:47 p.m. Sooyoung hadn't spoken during the entire ride, just stared out the tinted windows at the glittering Seoul skyline like she was trying to memorize a world she might lose again at any moment. Dokja's security chief, a former NIS agent named Kong Siwon, had asked exactly one question when he'd arrived at the hospital. Is she a threat? Dokja's answer had been simple. She's family. That was all Siwon needed to hear. Now, as they rode the private elevator to the 42nd floor, Dokja watched Sooyoung's reflection in the polished steel doors. She clutched a small plastic bag containing her mother's belongings from the hospital, the only possession she had left in the world. The hospital gown had been replaced with clothes his assistant had purchased in a frantic 20-minute shopping trip, jeans and a sweater that hung loose on her thin frame. She looked impossibly small in the elevator's gleaming interior, a fragile bird in a cage made of bulletproof glass and corporate steel. The penthouse doors opened to reveal 3,000 square feet of minimalist luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River. Marble floors so polished they looked like black mirrors. Furniture that cost more than most people's annual salary. It was a showpiece, not a home. Dokja realized with uncomfortable clarity that he'd never brought anyone here who wasn't staff or a business associate. The space was as cold and isolated as he was. The guest room is down that hall, he said, gesturing. Second door on the left. There's a bathroom attached. My housekeeper stocked it with essentials. Sooyoung nodded but didn't move. She stood in the entryway, still holding that plastic bag, looking lost. I've never been somewhere like this, she said quietly. Mom and I lived in a one-room apartment in Busan. We shared everything. Even the bathroom was down the hall. Something in Dokja's chest tightened. You'll get used to it. Will I? She looked up at him with those devastating eyes. Or will you figure out I'm not worth the trouble and send me back? Before Dokja could answer, his phone erupted with calls. His lawyer. His CFO. 3 board members. His grandmother's personal secretary. The hospital had obviously started talking. Or someone on his security team had leaked. Either way, the vultures were circling. He answered his lawyer first. Kim Dokja speaking. Sir, I'm hearing disturbing reports that you've removed a minor from Samsung Medical Center without proper guardianship documentation. Attorney Yoon's voice was tight with professional concern. We need to discuss the legal implications immediately. If Child Services files a complaint, if the girl's family comes forward with claims, this could expose the company to massive liability. The board is already calling for an emergency meeting. Schedule it for tomorrow morning, Dokja said, his voice flat. And prepare DNA testing documentation. I want paternity, no, familial relation testing done by our most discreet lab. Sir, may I ask what's going on? The rumors are saying this child claims to be related to you. Is this some kind of extortion attempt? Because if so, we need to involve the police before this escalates. Dokja looked at Sooyoung, who was pretending not to listen, studying a piece of abstract art on his wall like it held the secrets of the universe. She's not extorting anyone, Attorney Yoon. She's my niece. My late brother's daughter. And until I prove otherwise, she's under my personal protection. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds too long. I see. Sir, with all due respect, this is exactly the kind of impulsive decision that concerns the board. Your brother has been deceased for 8 years. If a child suddenly appears claiming relation, we need to verify everything before you make any public moves. The optics alone could tank our stock price. Then I suggest you work quickly, Dokja said and ended the call. The next call was from board director Shin, his grandmother's lapdog and the man who'd pushed hardest for Dokja to marry into a suitable chaebol family to secure alliances. This is unconscionable, Shin said without preamble. Bringing an unverified child into your home? Have you lost your mind? Your grandmother is furious. She's demanding you bring the girl to the family estate immediately for proper vetting. My grandmother can demand whatever she wants, Dokja replied, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet that made executives nervous. The girl stays with me. Tell the board I'll address their concerns tomorrow. And Director Shin? If anyone attempts to contact, photograph, or investigate Park Sooyoung without my explicit permission, I'll consider it a direct attack on Kim Holdings CEO. Respond accordingly. He hung up before Shin could sputter a response. 4 more calls came in immediately. He silenced them all. Sooyoung was sitting on the edge of his white leather couch now, looking even smaller against its expanse. I'm already causing you trouble, she said. Maybe I should just go. Child services might not be so bad. Child services would put you in a group home with 15 other kids and social workers too overworked to notice if you disappeared. Dokja sat in the chair across from her, suddenly exhausted. You're not going anywhere. Not until we have answers. And if the answers prove I'm lying? If the DNA test says I'm not your brother's daughter? Dokja met her gaze. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, tonight, you're staying here. You're safe. And that's the only thing that matters. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seoul glittered like a circuit board of ambition and greed. Inside the penthouse, a tattooed CEO and an orphan girl sat in uncomfortable silence, both wondering if they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. But for the first time in 8 years, Kim Dokja's perfectly controlled world felt less like a prison and more like something worth protecting. The DNA results arrived at 6:23 a.m. on a Tuesday, delivered by courier to Dokja's office while Sooyoung was still asleep in the penthouse guest room. Dr. Han, the geneticist who'd processed the samples personally and signed 3 NDAs to do so, stood across from Dokja's desk with a kind of nervous energy that came from delivering complicated news to powerful men. The paternity test is negative, Dr. Han said, sliding the folder across polished mahogany. Kim Dokja is not the biological father of Park Sooyoung. Dokja's expression didn't change. He'd expected this. Known it, really. But hearing it confirmed felt like watching a door close that he hadn't realized he'd wanted to stay open. What else? Dr. Han blinked. Sir. You're still standing here, which means there's more. So tell me. The doctor pulled out a second folder, this one thicker. You asked for a comprehensive familial DNA analysis. Standard paternity testing only examines direct parent-child relationships, but given your specifications, we ran a full kinship panel. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Park Sooyoung shares approximately 25% of her DNA with you. That's consistent with an avuncular relationship. In plain language, doctor. She's your niece. Biologically, definitively, your niece. The probability is 99.97%. The words hung in the air like smoke. Dokja's hands tightened on the armrests of his chair, the only outward sign of the earthquake happening inside his chest. His brother's daughter. Not a possibility. Not a claim. A fact. Scientific, irrefutable, real. You're certain. As certain as genetic science allows. We ran the test 3 times using different methodologies. The results are identical. Dr. Han hesitated. Sir, this means your brother had a child. A child no one knew about. Dokja stood abruptly, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's financial district. Somewhere out there, his brother had lived and loved and created a life without telling anyone. Without telling him. My brother died 8 years ago. This girl is 11. The timeline matches. It does. And there's something else. Dr. Han's voice softened. We found mitochondrial DNA markers that suggest the mother's family originated from Busan, consistent with the girl's story. Everything she's told you appears to be true. Dokja's reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. 8 years. 8 years he could have known about Sooyoung. 8 years she'd lived in poverty with a dying mother while he'd sat in boardrooms counting money that meant nothing. Does anyone else know about these results? Only you and me. The samples were processed under anonymous codes as requested. Keep it that way. Not a word to anyone, including my legal team. Not yet. Dr. Han nodded and left, leaving Dokja alone with the truth that changed everything. His brother had loved someone enough to give her his ring, to make her promises, to create a child. And then he died, taking all those secrets with him, leaving a pregnant woman to run and hide and raise their daughter in shadows. Dokja's phone buzzed. Attorney Yoon. Sir, the board is demanding answers. Director Shin is threatening to call for a vote of no confidence if you don't produce proof that this girl is legitimate. They want the DNA results immediately. Tell the board I'll address them when I'm ready. Sir, they're not going to wait. Your grandmother has already issued a statement to the family that you're harboring an imposter. She's threatening to cut you off from the Kim family trust if you don't remove the girl from your home. Dokja almost laughed. His grandmother, who'd never approved of his brother's relationship with Park Mina, who'd called her common, unsuitable, a distraction from family duty, who'd probably celebrated privately when Mina disappeared after the funeral. Of course she'd fight this. A bastard granddaughter threatened everything she'd built, every carefully arranged marriage alliance, every drop of so-called pure Kim blood. My grandmother can threaten whatever she wants, Dokja said quietly. But Park Sooyoung is my brother's daughter. That makes her a Kim, whether the family likes it or not. And I'll burn Kim Holdings to the ground before I let anyone touch her. He ended the call and looked down at the DNA report. 25% shared genetics. 99.97% probability. Cold scientific proof of a warm human truth. His brother had a daughter. He had a niece. And somewhere in the last 3 days, between hospital corridors and penthouse silences, Dokja had made a choice that couldn't be unmade. The dragon would protect his own, even if it cost him everything. Now that Dokja knows Sooyoung is truly his brother's daughter, do you think he'll choose family over his empire? Or will the board's threats make him reconsider? Drop a comment and let us know what you'd do in his position. The headline hit Korea Economic Daily at 7:14 a.m. Kim Holdings CEO harbors secret love child, succession crisis looms. By 7:30, it had spread to every major news portal in Seoul. By market open at 9 o'clock, Kim Holdings stock had dropped 8%. Dokja stood at the head of the boardroom table, watching 12 men and 3 women who'd built careers on reading market trends and exploiting weakness. They looked at him like sharks smelling blood in the water. Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Seoul skyline, but the view might as well have been a firing squad wall. Explain this. Director Shin threw a tablet onto the table. The screen showed a photo of Dokja leaving Samsung Medical Center with Sooyoung, her face partially visible, his hand protective on her shoulder. The press is calling her your illegitimate daughter. Our stock is in free fall. 3 major investors have already called requesting emergency meetings. The child is not my daughter, Dokja said, his voice ice. Then whose child is she? CFO Park demanded. Because right now, the market thinks you've been hiding a secret family. Our institutional investors are panicking. We've lost 4.2 billion won in market cap in 2 hours. She's my niece. My late brother's daughter. The silence that followed was deafening. Director Shin recovered first, his face flushing red. Your brother has been dead for 8 years. You expect us to believe a child just appeared out of nowhere. I have DNA evidence confirming the relationship. DNA evidence you've refused to share with this board, Attorney Yoon interjected smoothly. Sir, with respect, you're asking us to trust you on faith while our company burns. The shareholders deserve transparency. Board member Choi, his grandmother's oldest ally, leaned forward. This is exactly the kind of reckless behavior we've warned about. You're 29 years old, unmarried, no heirs of your own, and now you're claiming your deceased brother had a secret child? It looks like a desperate attempt to manufacture an heir to solidify your control. I don't need to manufacture anything, Dokja said quietly, dangerously. I control 51% of voting shares. What I do with my family is none of your concern. It becomes our concern when it destroys shareholder value, Shin shot back. The girl's mother was nobody. A gold digger who disappeared after your brother's death. Now suddenly she has a daughter? Where's the mother? Why didn't she come forward before? She's dead. Cancer. 3 months ago. Convenient, Choi muttered. Dokja's hands tightened into fists beneath the table. Watch your next words very carefully, Director Choi. Or what? You'll throw another tantrum. Choi stood, emboldened by the room's hostility. Your brother was weak. He would have run this company into the ground with his soft policies and his unsuitable romantic choices. His death was the best thing that could have happened to Kim Holdings, and everyone at this table knows it. The room went absolutely silent. Even Shin looked uncomfortable. Choi had said what others thought but never dared speak aloud. Dokja moved so fast that his chair skidded backward. He was across the table in 3 strides, his hand gripping Choi's collar, slamming him against the window. The glass flexed but didn't break. Say that again, Dokja whispered, his face inches from Choi's. Tell me again how my brother's death was convenient. Mr. Kim. Attorney Yoon was on his feet. You're assaulting a board member. I'm reminding a board member what happens when he forgets who's actually in charge. Dokja released Choi, who gasped for air. My brother built the international division that accounts for 40% of our revenue. He created the partnerships that you all profit from. And yes, he had a daughter. A daughter I'm bringing into this family, whether you like it or not. The shareholders will never accept this, Shin said. They'll vote you out. Then let them try. Dokja straightened his tie, his composure returning like armor. Emergency board meeting adjourned. Get back to work. Stabilize the stock price. And if anyone in this room leaks another word to the press, I'll find out who, and I'll make sure they never work in Seoul again. He walked out, leaving 15 board members staring after him, some angry, some calculating, all wondering the same thing. Had their CEO just signed his own death warrant, or had he finally shown them the dragon everyone whispered about but no one truly believed existed? Outside the boardroom, Dokja's phone showed 47 missed calls and Kim Holdings stock down 12%. The war had just begun. Dokja found Sooyoung on the penthouse balcony at midnight, wrapped in a blanket 3 times her size, staring at the city lights like they held answers to questions she was too afraid to ask. The news coverage had been brutal. Photos of her face plastered across every portal, reporters camped outside the building, speculation about gold diggers and succession plots and illegitimate heirs. His security team had intercepted 7 attempts to breach the building in the last 12 hours alone. "You should be sleeping," he said, stepping outside. "I saw the news." Her voice was small. "They're calling my mother terrible things. Calling me worse. Your stock dropped because of me." "The stock will recover. It always does." "But what if it doesn't? What if I ruin everything you built?" She turned to face him, and in the ambient light from the city, she looked even younger than 11. "Maybe I should just leave. Go to that group home. Let everyone forget I existed." Dokja sat in the chair beside her, something he'd never done before. He didn't do balconies. Didn't do midnight conversations. Didn't do vulnerability. But watching this child carry guilt that belonged to adults made something crack in his carefully constructed armor. "Do you know what this is?" He loosened his tie, unbuttoned his collar, revealing the black dragon tattoo that coiled up his neck. In boardrooms he kept it hidden, a shameful reminder of a past that didn't fit the CEO image. But here now, it felt necessary. Sooyoung stared. "Mom said you were called the dragon. I thought it was just a nickname." "It was. But it was also a promise." Dokja's voice was rough. "I got this when I was 16. Your father, my brother, was 19. Our father had just been arrested for embezzlement. The family empire was collapsing. We lost everything overnight. The house, the money, even our name. Other families stopped returning our calls. We ended up in Itaewon, in a one-room apartment that smelled like mold and broken dreams." He paused, remembering. "Your father could have abandoned me. He was old enough, smart enough. He could have changed his name, started over. But he didn't. He worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. Studied for university entrance exams by streetlight. And when the local gangs came collecting protection money we didn't have, he stood in front of me and refused to move." "They hurt him." Sooyoung whispered. "They tried. But your father had learned to fight growing up with our grandfather. Old school taekwondo, the kind that leaves scars. He took down 4 of them before their leader called it off." Dokja touched the tattoo. "That leader was a man named Dragon Kim. He respected strength. Said your father had fire in him, real dragon spirit. Offered us protection if we worked for him." "You joined a gang?" "For 2 years. Your father and I ran errands, collected debts, protected territory. It kept us alive and kept me in school. But your father hated it. Hated what we'd become, what I was becoming. So he made a plan. Took everyone we'd saved, invested it in a failing tech startup. Gambled everything on one deal." Dokja's voice softened. "It worked. That startup became the foundation of what's now Kim Holdings' international division. We went from street enforcers to millionaires in 3 years." "And the tattoo?" "Dragon Kim gave it to me himself. Said if I was going to protect my brother, I needed to look the part. The ink hurt less than everything else in my life at that point." He met her eyes. "Your father never got one. He said he didn't need ink to prove he was a dragon. He just was. Protecting people was his nature." Sooyoung touched her throat, where Dokja's tattoo ended. "Mom said he died protecting someone. That it wasn't an accident. I've suspected that for 8 years. Never had proof." Dokja's jaw tightened. "But I'm starting to think your mother was right. Someone wanted him gone. Someone who benefited from his death. The board. Maybe. Or family members who thought he was too soft, too moral, too much of a threat to their profitable corruption." He looked at her. "You asked if you should leave. If you're ruining what I built. But Sooyoung, what I built was purchased with your father's sacrifice. This company, this empire, it was supposed to be his. He earned it with blood and brilliance. And if he left behind a daughter, then everything I have belongs to you by right. I don't want your company." "I know. That's why you're the only person I trust with it." Dokja stood, rebuttoning his collar, hiding the dragon again. "Tomorrow I'm making a public announcement. I'm claiming you officially as my niece and heir. The vultures will circle. The stock might crash. But I'm done hiding. We're dragons, Sooyoung. And dragons protect their own." She looked up at him with those impossible eyes. "Even if it costs everything?" "Especially then." Dokja just revealed the dragon's origin and his street fighting past to Sooyoung. "Do you think this vulnerability will bring them closer, or will his enemies use it against him? Comment below and tell us if you trust someone with your darkest secrets." The woman who arrived at the penthouse Tuesday morning had credentials that checked out perfectly. Young Myri, Senior Case Manager from Seoul Child Protective Services, badge number 4782, 15 years of experience. She smiled warmly at Siwon when he verified her identity at the security desk. She had the right paperwork, the right authorizations, even the right tired look of a social worker who'd seen too much and cared too deeply. Dokja was in back-to-back meetings at Kim Holdings headquarters, trying to stop the bleeding from yesterday's press disaster. Attorney Yoon had drafted a statement. The PR team had prepared damage control. Everything was scheduled, controlled, managed. He'd left Sooyoung with explicit instructions to stay in the penthouse, not answer the door, not talk to anyone. Siwon and 2 other security personnel were stationed outside. But when Young Myri showed her credentials and explained she needed to conduct a mandatory wellness check on Park Sooyoung per court order, Siwon hesitated only 3 seconds before letting her through. The paperwork looked legitimate. The badge scanned correctly. And refusing a court-ordered check could give child services ammunition to remove Sooyoung legally. Sooyoung was reading in the living room when Myri entered, a book about astronomy that Dokja's housekeeper had bought because she'd mentioned loving stars. She looked up at the stranger with immediate wariness, that street-smart caution that came from years of instability. Park Sooyoung. Myri's voice was gentle. I'm from Child Services. I just need to ask you a few questions about your living situation. Make sure you're safe and comfortable here. Mr. Kim said not to talk to anyone. I understand. But this is required by law, sweetie. I'm here to help you, not hurt you. Myri sat on the couch, keeping distance, non-threatening. Can you tell me how you're feeling? Are you eating well? Sleeping okay? Sooyoung nodded slowly. The questions seemed normal. Safe. Myri asked about school plans, medical care, whether she felt scared or pressured. Standard welfare check questions delivered with practiced empathy. 15 minutes passed. Sooyoung's guard lowered incrementally. Would you like some juice? Myri asked, pulling a small bottle from her bag. I always carry these for the kids I visit. Apple juice, your favorite according to your file. Sooyoung's file wouldn't have listed favorite juice. She'd never been in the system long enough. But she was 11 and tired and desperately wanting to trust someone who seemed kind. She took the bottle, unscrewed the cap, raised it to her lips. Don't drink that. The voice came from the doorway. Not Siwon. Someone else. A woman in her 50s, dressed in a housekeeper's uniform, carrying fresh linens. Mrs. Kong, who'd worked for Dokja for 3 years and never spoke unless necessary. Myri's smile didn't falter. Excuse me. That badge. Mrs. Kong pointed. The hologram's wrong. CPS changed their badge design 6 months ago. I know because my daughter works there. Myri stood slowly. You're mistaken. And your shoes. Mrs. Kong stepped forward. Gucci. Social workers don't wear 3,000,001 shoes to welfare checks. Everything happened in 3 seconds. Myri lunged for Sooyoung. Mrs. Kong threw the linens, tangling Myri's arms. Sooyoung screamed. Siwon burst through the door, weapon drawn. 2 more guards followed. Myri was fast, trained, dangerous. She broke free from the linens, grabbed Sooyoung by the arm, yanked her toward the balcony. I just need the girl. No one else gets hurt. Siwon fired a warning shot into the ceiling. On the ground. Now. Myri hesitated, calculating odds. Former military, Dokja would realize later. Special forces. Someone had sent a professional. She released Sooyoung, raised her hands, and dropped to her knees. Her smile was gone, replaced by cold professionalism. You're only delaying the inevitable. They want her gone. They'll keep trying until they succeed. Who's they? Siwon demanded. Myri said nothing. Dokja arrived 20 minutes later to find Sooyoung shaking in Mrs. Kang's arms, Myri zip tied on the floor, and Siwon on the phone with police. The juice bottle sat on the coffee table, contents already sent for lab analysis. It would come back positive for sedatives. Enough to knock out a child for hours. Long enough to disappear her. Dokja knelt in front of Sooyoung, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Did she hurt you? Sooyoung shook her head, tears streaming. She almost took me. If Mrs. Kong hadn't. I know. Dokja pulled her close, something he'd never done before. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Over her head, he met Siwon's eyes. The message was clear. Someone on the board had made a move. Someone had hired a professional to kidnap an 11-year-old girl. Someone had just declared war. And Kim Dokja was done playing defense. Dokja made 3 phone calls from his office, while Sooyoung slept in the penthouse under triple security. The first was to his head of corporate investigations, a former prosecutor who specialized in finding things people wanted buried. The second was to Dragon Kim, the gang leader who'd given him his tattoo 15 years ago and now ran a legitimate security consulting firm that still had very illegitimate connections. The third was to his personal banker in the Cayman Islands, authorizing a transfer that would make certain people very uncomfortable. By sunrise, he had names. The fake CPS agent was Min Ji-young, former Special Forces, dishonorably discharged 3 years ago for excessive force. She'd been hired through a shell company registered to a law firm that did consulting work for Kim Holdings. 3 board members used that firm exclusively. Director Shin, CFO Park, and board member Choi, who'd called his brother's death convenient. Dragon Kim's people had been more direct. They'd visited Min Ji-young's apartment at 3 a.m., and by 4 a.m., she was singing. The contract had come through an intermediary, but the payment originated from an account linked to Shin's wife's art gallery. 50 million won to grab the girl. Another 50 if she disappeared permanently. No questions asked. Dokja sat in the dark of his office, the city glittering 42 floors below, and felt something cold and ancient settle into his bones. These men had tried to kidnap his niece. Had planned to make an 11-year-old orphan vanish because her existence threatened their profit margins and succession plans. They'd hired a trained killer and sent her into his home with sedatives and false credentials. They just made the last mistake of their careers. The emergency board meeting was called for 9 a.m. Mandatory attendance. Dokja arrived at 8:45, dressed in black suit and blood-red tie, the dragon tattoo visible above his collar for the first time in 7 years. He didn't hide it anymore. Didn't care who saw. Let them remember what he'd been before the boardrooms and business degrees. 15 board members filed in, some curious, some hostile, some nervous. Director Shin took his usual seat at Dokja's right, CFO Park to his left. Board member Choi sat across, arms folded, defiant. None of them knew what was coming. Dokja waited until everyone was seated before he spoke. Yesterday, someone tried to kidnap my niece from my home. His voice was quiet, conversational. A fake social worker with sedatives and a plan to make an 11-year-old girl disappear. Does anyone here know anything about that? The silence was absolute. Shin's face remained neutral. Park shifted almost imperceptibly. Choi's jaw tightened. No. Dokja smiled, and it was the smile of a street fighter who'd learned to wear suits. Let me help refresh your memories. He pressed a button. The conference room screen lit up with bank transfer records, shell company registrations, and surveillance photos of Min Ji-young entering the building. 50 million won. Paid through Shin's wife's gallery account to a former Special Forces operative. Another 50 promised upon successful completion. Shin stood abruptly. This is absurd. You're fabricating evidence to deflect from your own poor judgment in harboring this girl. Sit down, Dokja said softly. Or I'll have security make you. Shin sat. Dokja continued. I've spent the last 12 hours tracing every payment, every phone call, every dirty little secret you three thought you'd buried. He looked at each of them in turn. You tried to kidnap a child. My brother's child. You hired someone to drug her and make her disappear. You can't prove any of this would hold up in court, Park said, his voice shaking. I don't need court. Dokja's voice dropped to ice. I need leverage. And gentlemen, I have plenty. He nodded to Attorney Yoon, who distributed folders to each board member. Inside, you'll find documentation of bribes, embezzlement, fraud, and a fascinating trail of offshore accounts that somehow coincide with board decisions that cost Kim Holdings millions while enriching your personal portfolios. Choi's face went white. This is blackmail. This is justice. Dokja leaned forward. You have two options. Option 1, you resign immediately, sell your shares at current market price to buyers I designate, sign NDAs that will ruin you if you ever speak publicly about Kim Holdings or my family, and disappear quietly into whatever holes you crawl from. Option 2, I release everything to prosecutors, press, and shareholders simultaneously. You'll spend the next decade in prison while your families watch your reputations burn. The board will never allow this, Shin hissed. The board will do exactly what I tell them. Dokja stood. Because unlike you, I actually built something worth protecting. My brother built it. And his daughter will inherit it. Not you. Not your corruption. Not your greed. He buttoned his jacket. You have until noon to decide. Choose wisely. He walked out, leaving 3 men staring at folders that contained their professional obituaries. Behind him, he heard Shin's voice, desperate and angry, making calls that would go nowhere. It didn't matter. The war was over. The dragon had won. And anyone who'd threatened his family had just learned what happened when you forgot where Kim Dokja came from. The dragon just destroyed 3 board members who tried to kidnap Sooyoung. But was this victory too easy? Do you think there are bigger enemies lurking in the shadows? Drop your theories in the comments because this war might not be over yet. The Kim family estate sat on 3 acres in Songbuk, old money wrapped in traditional architecture and century-old pine trees. Dokja hadn't been here in 2 years, not since his grandmother had demanded he marry the daughter of a Samsung executive to secure alliance. He'd refused then. He was refusing now. But this time, he wasn't alone. Sooyoung walked beside him up the stone path, wearing a navy dress his assistant had chosen, her hair pulled back neatly. She looked terrified. Dokja's hand found her shoulder, steadying. Remember what I told you. You don't bow to anyone. You don't apologize for existing. You're a Kim. Act like it. The main hall was full. His grandmother sat in the seat of honor, 78 years old and sharp as broken glass. The remaining board members lined the walls like sentries. Aunts, uncles, distant cousins who only appeared when inheritance was discussed. All of them staring at Sooyoung like she was a stain on their carefully curated bloodline. You dare bring her here. His grandmother's voice could have frozen fire. This child. This bastard. This child is your granddaughter, Dokja said calmly. Park Sooyoung, daughter of Kim Miho, your eldest son. My brother. And whether you acknowledge her or not, she carries Kim blood. Lies. His grandmother's hand trembled on her cane. Miho would never have hidden a child from family. And that woman, Park Mina, was nothing but a gold digger who disappeared when she realized there was no money to steal. Park Mina disappeared because someone in this room made sure Miho died. Dokja's voice cut through the murmurs. Someone who benefited from removing the true heir. Someone who wanted me in charge because I could be controlled. The room erupted. Accusations, denials, outrage. Dokja let them rage. Then he pulled out a folder, the same one Dragon Kim's investigators had compiled. Miho's car went off Banpo Bridge 8 years ago. Police called it an accident. But the brake lines were cut. The steering column tampered with. I had the wreckage re-examined by independent forensics. It was murder. His grandmother's face went pale. You're lying. I'm done lying. Done pretending this family isn't built on blood and corruption. Dokja opened the folder, showed photos of the tampered car, mechanical reports, witness statements from a garage worker who'd been paid to stay quiet. Someone here wanted Miho dead. And I'm going to find out who. This is madness, one of his uncles protested. You're destroying this family over conspiracy theories and a child who could be anyone's. She's Miho's daughter. DNA confirmed. 25% genetic match to me. 99.97% probability. Dokja's voice was steel. Which makes her the rightful heir to everything Miho built. Everything that should have been his. His grandmother stood, trembling with rage. If you pursue this, if you legitimize this girl, I will disown you. You'll lose access to the family trust. Your cousins will challenge you for CEO position. The board will revolt. Let them. Dokja moved to stand beside Sooyoung, his hand protective on her shoulder. I've already removed 3 board members who tried to kidnap her. I'll remove anyone else who threatens her. Grandmother, you taught me that family is everything. That Kim blood matters above all else. Well, Sooyoung has that blood. And unlike most of you, she didn't ask for it. Didn't scheme for it. She just wants to exist without being erased. She's weakness, his grandmother hissed. Just like her father. Miho was too soft, too moral, too willing to compromise profit for principles. He would have destroyed everything we built. He built the international division. He created partnerships based on respect, not exploitation. He made us billions. Dokja's voice cracked slightly. And you're right. He was moral. He was soft. He was everything you couldn't control. So someone killed him. The silence that followed was suffocating. His grandmother sank back into her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 78 years. What do you want, Dokja? I want Sooyoung recognized as Kim Miho's daughter. Full family acknowledgement. Her name in the registry. And I want the board restructured. New members, vetted by me, with no connections to the old corruption. He paused. And I want whoever killed my brother. Names. Proof. Justice. And if I refuse? Then I walk away. I resign as CEO. Take my 51% controlling shares. Sell them to whoever wants to watch this empire crumble. His jaw tightened. You'll lose everything, grandmother. The company, the reputation, the legacy. All because you couldn't accept one little girl. His grandmother stared at Sooyoung, who stood straight-backed despite obvious fear. Seeing perhaps an echo of the son she'd lost. Or maybe just calculating cost versus benefit, power versus principle. Finally, she spoke. She stays. But on my terms. She attends proper schools. Learns proper manners. Becomes a Kim in more than just blood. No. Sooyoung's voice was small but clear. Every head turned. I don't want to be what you think a Kim should be. I want to be what my father was. Kind. Honest. Someone who protects people instead of using them. She looked at Dokja's grandmother. You can accept me as I am, or I'll leave. I don't need your approval. I just needed someone to claim me. And Uncle Dokja already did. The old woman's eyes widened. Then, impossibly, she smiled. Just barely. You have his fire. Miho's fire. She nodded once. Very well. Welcome to the family, Park Sooyoung. Try not to let them corrupt you. Dokja exhaled. The war wasn't over. But this battle was won. 3 months later, Dokja found Sooyoung on the penthouse balcony again, but this time she wasn't wrapped in fear and uncertainty. She was laughing, pointing at constellations with the telescope he bought her, explaining to Mrs. Kong which stars were actually planets and why Mars looked red. Her cheeks had filled out. The hollowness from illness had been replaced by the healthy glow of a child who ate 3 meals a day and slept without nightmares. She'd started at Seoul International School 2 weeks ago. The other students whispered, of course. Everyone knew who she was. The secret niece. The girl who'd crashed into Kim Dokja's perfect life and somehow survived. But Sooyoung had made 2 friends already, girls who cared more about her astronomy obsession than her last name. Kim Holdings' stock had recovered. Better than recovered. The restructured board, cleansed of corruption, had implemented policies Dokja's brother had drafted years ago. Ethical partnerships. Fair labor practices. Environmental initiatives. Profit margins dipped initially, but long-term investor confidence soared. Turns out doing business with integrity wasn't just moral. It was profitable. Director Shin had resigned quietly, taking his wife and his offshore accounts to Singapore. CFO Park was under investigation, his assets frozen. Board member Choi had suffered a heart attack, stress-induced his doctor said, though Dokja suspected it was the weight of consequences finally catching up. The new board members were younger, hungrier, less interested in protecting old money than building new empires. And the investigation into his brother's death had finally yielded answers. Not the grandmother, surprisingly. She'd been genuinely ignorant. But 2 of Dokja's uncles, terrified that Miho would shift company focus away from construction contracts that lined their pockets, had hired someone to make the accident look natural. They were both in custody now, facing murder charges. His grandmother had disowned them publicly, her voice steady when she told reporters that justice mattered more than family name. Dokja watched Sooyoung now, this child who'd walked into his life holding a ring and a story, and realized everything had changed. The penthouse felt less like a museum and more like a home. He ate breakfast now instead of skipping it. Came home at reasonable hours instead of sleeping at the office. Laughed at Sooyoung's terrible jokes about planets and physics. Found himself actually caring about things beyond quarterly earnings. Uncle Dokja? Sooyoung called from the telescope. Come look. Jupiter's moons are visible tonight. Uncle Dokja. Not Mr. Kim. Not sir. Uncle. The word had felt foreign 3 months ago. Now it felt right. He joined her at the telescope, let her guide his eye to the viewfinder, listened as she explained orbital mechanics with the passion of someone who'd found their calling. She wanted to be an astronomer, she'd announced last week. Maybe work for NASA or Carrie. Dokja had immediately contacted the Korean Astronomy and Space Science Institute about summer programs, because that's what you did when your niece had dreams. Can you see them? Sooyoung asked. The 4 biggest moons. Galileo discovered them. Dokja could see them. 4 tiny points of light around a massive planet. They're beautiful. Mom used to say we're all just moons orbiting around the people we love. We don't have our own light, but we reflect theirs. Sooyoung's voice softened. She said Dad was her Jupiter. Bright and strong and impossible to look away from. Dokja's throat tightened. He would have been proud of you. So proud. Do you think he knew? About me, I mean. Before he died. I think he knew. I think he loved you before you were born. And I think he made sure your mother had that ring so someday, when you needed protection, you could find your way home. Dokja looked at this girl, his brother's legacy, his unexpected salvation. You brought chaos into my life, Sooyoung. Appended everything I thought I wanted. She looked worried. Is that bad? No. He smiled, really smiled, something he'd forgotten how to do until she arrived. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. Turns out I didn't need more control or power or perfection. I needed you. Needed to remember what I was protecting all this for. Sooyoung hugged him suddenly, fiercely, this small human who'd survived loss and illness and corporate warfare with more grace than adults twice her age. Dokja hugged back, letting himself feel something he'd locked away 8 years ago. Hope. The city glittered below them, millions of lights representing millions of lives. Somewhere out there, his brother's memory lived on. In business partnerships built on trust. In policies that prioritized people over profit. In a little girl who looked at stars and saw infinite possibility. Kim Dokja, the Iron Dragon of Kim Holdings, had spent years building walls. But Sooyoung had walked through them carrying nothing but truth and a gold ring. And in the wreckage of those walls, he'd found something worth more than any empire. He'd found family. Come on, he said, ruffling her hair. It's past your bedtime. You have that astronomy club presentation tomorrow. 5 more minutes, please. Dokja pretended to consider. 10. But only because Jupiter doesn't care about bedtimes. Sooyoung grinned and turned back to her telescope. And Kim Dokja stood beside her, no longer alone, no longer frozen, finally understanding what his brother had known all along. Dragons don't just protect their own. They love them.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.